Scandal is a term synonymous with politics. As a British audience specifically, it feels we've become desensitised to the level of unruly, law-breaking, delinquent and downright shameful behaviour our MPs consistently produce. Those operating under the honourable decree of Member of Parliament should be custodians of morality, totems of decency, and provide solid role models for the nation to some degree. Unfortunately, we find that degree is often wavering largely. A society failed by its MPs is surely doomed to fail itself, right? So no wonder these appointed guards of the regions and our greatest interests find themselves under the searing spotlight of Jeremiad tonight. This, ladies and gentlemen, is an expose, no holds barred. MPs behaving badly, 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 badly.
Here, here.
And there ain't no shortage of them. Anywhere you look, kick up the nearest stone and scandal won't be far away.
A point you touched on there is that these are people who we elect to uphold the law, to obviously shape and craft our laws for the betterment of society, ultimately. Yet we have seen in recent years, I think, just a spate of abuse, of just sort of charlatanism, really.
Yeah.
Unashamed abuse of power, abuse of dominance, in the words of those currently suing FIFA, just after it was a Jeremiad topic, I may add. Let's see what action happens after this episode goes live. Let's see if Westminster is purged after Jeremiad begins their tirade against these absolute scandalous scumbags.
Let the night of the long knives commence. And
Ooh,
you mentioned there, Mr. Burton, good sir, about the essence of the law and the duty that these MPs have to uphold the law. Now I ask you, what value does law retain when it is so constantly undermined in this way? It's indicative of a failing government, essentially, and that cascades and transpires very poorly in greater society.
absolutely. It's like you see, these are people that should be setting an example.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, people with less moralities than us, will think, well, or if Boris Johnson can drink during lockdown and have parties, then why can't I? You
Yes.
know, if so and so can get away with this, well, then why can't we do it? You know, it's a steep slope when they begin falling down it, because, as you say, these people are upholders of the law and they should be setting an example. And they're in a position of power and responsibility. And I feel like, particularly, obviously, we have had a change of government. I think that's important to note. We're always topical here on Jeremiad. We At long fucking last, some might say that the Conservatives are out of power now. For now, they, like any sort of monstrosity, it will rear its ugly head again, I'm sure, but not for 5 years at least. But I feel like under the Conservatives, particularly, the sort of Westminster had this almost like a kind of boys' club feel. You know, sort of a bunch of MPs who'd always, not just in their political careers, but just throughout their whole life, had gotten away with rule breaking. Usually because, daddy's money will fix it, or they know the right people. Oh, it's okay. Like, I know the police commissioner, so we don't have to worry about this. We'll sweep this one under the rug, kind of thing. And I think that sort of attitude of privilege
Yeah.
and getting away with things because you know the right people or you have the money sort of carried on into Parliament. Hopefully now under Labour we'll see a bit of a change. I know that a lot more Labour MPs come from, working class backgrounds, went to state school. So many Tories were privately educated, and I think going to private school and stuff where they do get away with these things, it just fosters that attitude in them. But I think really we should, this is all just talk. I think we need to provide some concrete examples for the listener. So would you care, Andy, to spin a yarn of one MP who has behaved badly?
So you want me to go up first? Okay. There's almost going to be something of the Mexican standoff to this episode. I feel for the listener. So as we mentioned, it's MPs behaving badly, and what we've got and what we've gone and done today to illustrate the point of the lack of proficiency, largely over the past few years. To be fair, in this field of government, of governance, of negligence, really, is we've selected a few standout incidents or powerhouse personalities that we think deserve to be shamed so brilliantly publicly. So we're just going to go back and forth. We don't really know, apart from one MP, we don't know who each other has selected and brought into this pot. So we might have both just picked the exact same people. Nevertheless, I'll stop rambling and start a different ramble. The first name that I bring to the table today, Mr. Burton, and I hope you're familiar with him. And he
God,
did get
the
points.
anticipation is killing me, Andy.
He did get points because of his name. Lots of this is based on his name. He was so befitting the crime. Chris Pincher. Are you familiar?
No, I'm not. So
Wonderful. Allow me. So in June 2022, when he had his obviously most recent and most daring dazzle in the spotlight, Chris Pincher resigned as a deputy chief whip after he had a night out at the Carlton Club, which is a private gents club in London, where, in his own words, he embarrassed himself. Whereas what he actually did was groped two unwanting gentlemen in the club. The news of this then led to more allegations over the past decade coming to light, all of a very similar, seedy, and undoubtedly pinching nature. And I can't help but feel, I mean, it is quite jovial. It's quite trivial. His name is Chris Pincher, and he's literally there groping some gentlemen. Of course, the other allegations I believe are a bit more serious, but he's a repeat offender in instances of sexual harassment and assault. Really, unwanted sexual advances. So there's actually, I remember this at the time when it happened, and it was the comedic value of the news story was not lost on me then. Obviously, it's very sad that and no doubt traumatic for these fellas that have been on the receiving end of Chris's pinch, and also just a very damning state of affairs. I mean, deputy chief whip, that's a fairly high sort of position within the establishment. But in 2017, when he was the comptroller of the household, and all I thought of when I came across that term was the Wyatt and Ziggy Sobotka, of course. But Ziggy is not an MP we're naming here. But yeah, so 2017, he held that position when the backlash of the Harvey Weinstein allegations and the subsequent Me Too movement infiltrated our humble shores. And obviously, on the back of that, and rightly so, in droves, the marginalised began to come forward. And there was a Labour MP, Tom Bleckinsop, great name, who accused Chris Pincher of sexual assault. Now that's quite interesting because that's not just an MP on a gentleman or another MP. That's Tory versus Labour. That's like a culture war in the domination of another male, or the attempt of that. Apparently, Bleckinsop told him point blank to fuck off, and former Olympic rower Alex Story alleged that Chris Pincher made unwanted advances towards him. And bringing back the Harvey Weinstein context, Story referred to Pincher as a pound shop Weinstein.
That's fantastic. That there is a classic case of nominative determinism.
Yes.
Something I believe wholeheartedly in, particularly when you look at Tom Hanks's children, Chet Hanks and
Oh,
Colin Hanks. You don't
oh,
even need to ask which one's fucking Chet and which one's Colin.
Chet is a hero. I love
That
him.
100%. But back to Mr. Pincher. It's just scandalous, isn't it? I mean, it's inappropriate in any profession for anyone to do that sort of thing.
So I think for me, what's most damning about that is that this is someone who's had repeated instances of such lewd and inappropriate behaviour that not only at the moment that it kind of came into the public sphere, but this will have been known by his employers by senior figures within the Conservative hierarchy, and yet he was offered further positions, but further positions with greater significance. And again, when you look at, as we mentioned, about role models and the kind of, I don't know, the utopia of society, all it's doing is reinforcing such negative behaviors and ideals. Like almost, you behave this way and you'll be rewarded for it.
It's that sort of arrogance, isn't it? It's kind of like I can just sort of I know the right people. I'm in the right club. That sort of boys' club thing of I can
It's exactly
com-
that.
commit these crimes, and not only am I not going to face any retribution for that, but I'm actually going to sort of be rewarded almost. It's sickening, but you see it all the time, not just in Parliament, but in lots of other industries as well. People are protected. Lots of people know. I mean, people knew about Savile. Everyone in the BBC knew about that, but they protected him.
Well, Hugh Edwards, he is an even more recent example. It's exactly the same thing. I think he's
It
still on
is.
their payroll.
Well, and he got a 40 grand pay rise last year.
While
And
this was all going on.
that's taxpayer money, and that's also another point with MPs. They're at the moment their salary is now £91,346 a year of
Yeah.
taxpayer money.
Yeah.
This is big boy money, and they think it's okay to behave in this way whilst hard-working citizens, honest, upright citizens of society like you and me, Andy, are paying our dues. You know, and if we commit these crimes, we'd probably lose our jobs, possibly face criminal charges. That's the one thing that really gets to me about this is the fact that they often do get away with it.
It reminds me of that often touted colloquialism that it's a different world for them, particularly relating to the privilege aspect. And that's just, I mean, people say that about anyone with money, really, or typically it's associated with a class divide. But particularly in the remit when applied to MPs, it actually is a very true statement. But it's also even more damning that it is such a true statement because they're the ones that should be shaping the world to be fair and equal. Yet there they are reaping the rewards of sowing it completely unevenly. It's a curved line, isn't it?
Right. Well, I'll run with mine. This is
Yeah.
one that you will be very aware of. This dear listener, this is a very personal one to me.
Here we go.
Um, it's difficult to talk about actually. Cast your mind back to 2017 when we had a little snap election, and I was living in Sheffield Hallam constituency at the time, and our MP was Nick Clegg. He was a bastard, Mister. I will scrap tuition fees if you elect me, and then sorry, we're going to triple your tuition fees. Fucking prick. So I and a lot of it's a heavy student area. I think we all were just like, right, let's get rid of him. Let's out him. Labour fielded a relatively young rookie MP, Jared O'Mara. That is
Yeah.
a name that I say very with a very heavy heart. I can the bile. I can taste it. And I vote. Oh, it's difficult to say.
Come on, Tom. It's all right. We're here with you.
That's okay. You can do this, Tom. You can do this. I voted for Jared O'Mara. Oh, getting some real demons off my chest here, man. Oh, God. Yeah, well, some of you may be wondering what was so wrong about that. Well, let me tell you all about Jared O'Mara. Absolute fucking bastard. He was actually a Sheffield man, former DJ at West Street Live. That in itself should be a crime because that's a fucking horrific club. Um, and he was they just didn't vet this guy at all. It was a bit of a rush. I think under the snap election they were like, fuck, we need to get someone to stand in Sheffield Hallam. This guy, I think he'd stood for like councillor once or twice, and they were like, right, Jared, you're in, you're up, kind of thing. Go get him, son. They didn't really expect him to win against Nick Clegg. He did. It was a bit of a shock. And then a series of comments and tweets made got him suspended from the party. This isn't the worst thing he did, but this just kind of gives a little detail of the kind of character we're dealing with here. Ironically, he was suspended from the Women and Equality Select Committee after a series of sexist comments were found. He said of the pop group Girls Aloud that, I quote, "I advise you to sack Sarah, and the remaining 4 members can come and have an orgy with me." In regards to, I don't know who this is. Do you recall 2003 winner of Pop Idol, Michelle McManus?
No.
No, me neither. Jared said that she only won because she was fat. He also referred to gay men as pufters and fudge packers, and referred to jazz musician Jamie Cullum, who also I don't know, but he referred to him as a conceited cunt who should be sodomized with his own piano.
Do you know what? I respect that last comment. There's a bit of class to that, and that such a visceral attack on a jazz musician. By and large, they are conceited cunts by the nature of playing jazz. So you
That
know, Jared,
I won't necessarily disagree with you there.
He's missed with a couple of those comments, but there's something in that one. At this point, Tom, I'm kind of on the fence. You know.
Okay, well, let's see. Let's keep going. It also emerged that he'd been posting derogatory comments about children in Sheffield and appeared to advocate corporal punishment to deal with delinquent youth. Now, you know me, I don't like children. The children of Sheffield can be little bastards, but corporal punishment, it's a bit far. It's a bit far. But really, where Jared really comes into his own is he scammed the taxpayer, is what he did. He made fraudulent claims of up to £30,000 so that he could fund his cocaine habit.
That's rock and roll politics.
To be fair, you do have to kind of admire the audacity of it. I need my coke money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a fake charity called Confident About Autism South Yorkshire. And he got £19,400 of claims related to that charity, but it was such a harebrained scheme that the
Yeah.
postcode that he gave for this fake organization was actually the McDonald's in Hillsborough. I mean, it's such a sort of like boneheaded move. You know, we're not talking about a criminal mastermind here. You know,
Yeah.
just a fool who was in a position he never should have been. And the stories that came out, I mean, he barely was in his surgery. He never once asked an oral question in Commons. He was basically an absent MP,
Yeah.
and he was very dismissive when people criticized him. He just said, you know, you don't understand. You're all bigots. Blah 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 blah. He spent a lot of time off actually for like sort of mental health, and he was suspended by the party after the sexist comments, but he was reinstated. But then he got um, kicked out again after the whole expense claims things. His chief of staff, Gareth Arnold, is quoted as saying that Jared was the most disgustingly morally bankrupt person he had ever had the displeasure of working with. So yeah, so then it did go to court. Jared was then subsequently sentenced to 4 years in prison. It's bad for anyone, but because I voted for him, because I put my faith in him, it really sort of rings, you know, it hits home. It hits home for me. Do you know what he did, Andy? He took my vote, my precious vote, and he took it, he rolled it up, and he put it in his mouth, and he chewed it up, and he got it all nice and wet, and then he spat it back in my face. That's what he did to me.
The thing is about that though is he's obviously just sucked all the nutrients from the vote, you know, and everyone knows they absorb better when you rub them on the gums. So he's got the little bit of a buzz that your vote might have given you, and all you've got back from that transaction is infinitely damaged faith in the political system. Because that's the thing, isn't it? That's the fallout there. It's an interesting anecdote, tale, really, a tragedy that you can split many different ways, and is perhaps the most damning aspect of Jared's demise, that, as you say, Labour didn't really vet him properly or have a suitable candidate that's actually going to do the work required. It's actually going to be an upstanding member of the Parliament. I think it reflects very poorly on Labour as a party, and I suppose as well, if you're someone in that district, you don't really think that they give a damn about you at all after an incident like that.
Exactly, and like I have very little faith in the political system anyway. I'm not much of a believer in it all. And that was the first time I ever voted as well. That was the first time I'd gone to vote, and I ended up voting for a fucking criminal. A drug addicted criminal who swindled the taxpayer, who let down the people, the good people of Sheffield Hallam. You know, and it's just. I mean, this is a case though, at least, where justice eventually was done. He's in prison
Yeah,
now. I don't know, what he's going to do when he comes out. Maybe he's written a memoir or something like that.
I hope so.
But yeah, so at least in this case we have some retribution. But what it's done is, like you say, it rocked my confidence in the system. I thought, well, why should I vote again?
Mm,
What if the next person I vote for is also a complete scumbag and a criminal? It's a very sordid affair. It didn't reflect well on Labour, and hopefully they've learned. I mean, I doubt it. They rarely do, but maybe we can hope. I've learned. So
yeah.
yeah, top that one, Andy. Come on, it's your
Fair
riposte.
enough. Yeah, I think that was more than an adequate reply. You've certainly thwacked the ball back into my court with some heady vigour, and now
Mm.
I draw for my only remaining weapon, my trusted bottle of vinegar, to douse uh,
Oh,
to douse the ball and salt it back your way. We're
oh,
gonna go.
damn! Oh, it just
Gonna
got
go,
serious.
we're going to go a bit further north now and across the border. The SNP, oh my God, in recent years, the SCP has just been a breeding ground of scandal. Well, having said that, they all have, haven't they? Pretty much, all the major UK political parties have just been fucking scandal ridden. Like they've got a rat problem and they just don't understand how to get rid of it. This one chap in particular, though, he really impressed me with just the sheer. I think audacity is the word that comes to mind for what happens with this again. I thought it was a hoax when I first read about this story. You just think this day and age, and that kind of thing happens. This slipped through the net. Okay, the man in question goes by the name of Michael Matheson. Michael Matheson. Mike Matheson. So, Michael, the good chap, he was the SNP Health Secretary at the time. And while on holiday with his family in Morocco, he somehow managed to run up an £11,000 data roaming charge on a government issued iPad. How on earth does one do that? Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Of course, Mr. Matheson initially claimed that the bill was due to him conducting parliamentary and constituency business. So, he's got the iPad, but he's there, he's using it, he's keeping things ticking over. He's on holiday, but actually, he's a working man. He can do both. He can balance the family life and the rigours of being a health secretary of a major political party such as the SNP. The question for me as well there though is, like, wherever you were staying, did they not have Wi-Fi? Who these days doesn't have unlimited data, for one thing, because it's so cheap and widely available now? 11,000 is quite a heady amount to run up. Did someone maybe not notice at 1,000? They thought, Jesus, that's a lot of data, Michael. Anyway, so yeah, he'd initially, excuse me, stated that it was all in good nature. He was doing work. That's what had accrued the charge. Then, as it transpired, because I don't think many people bought his ultimately reticent narrative, he soon shifted gear and passed the blame on to his sons, who had been watching football on the device. And I actually remember seeing this where he was in Parliament and he was there on the verge of tears. Looked to me like he had been crying. Yeah, stood there very emotional and admitting this, that it was actually his son's, well, admitting it or just assuredly pointing the blame, claiming that previously he'd not mentioned them because he didn't want the family involved in the saga and protecting them from scrutiny. Now, on the one hand, of course, you know, there is sense in that, and you wouldn't want your family involved in it. On the other hand, control your children. Maybe what he needs is some corporal punishment. No. On the on the other hand, I think
All
it's
right, Jared.
worse that yeah, maybe Michael and Jared could meet up behind bars and become a crackpot independent political team. I don't know. They finally
Well,
bring independence about.
yeah, or they could, you know, sort of co-run some sort of parenting uh, advice company. I don't know.
A really soft parenting approach advice group where it's all about admonishing any blame from them and absorbing it yourself. The kid is never in the wrong. If the kid does something wrong, then you lash yourself on the back with a whip
Hmm.
to that kind of level. You know, instill with them that desire to never want to cause pain. Yeah, Mr. Michael previously trying to claim it was all him, then actually admit, no, you know what? Let me just drop my sons in it. Uh, and subsequently, as it transpired, he did agree to pay back the entire fund, which I think is only right.
Yes.
Um, and the issue then got a little bit convoluted because members of sort of Scottish conservative leader, I forget his name, Douglas something, a right piece of work he is. He was on the warpath talking about how disgraceful, how much of a scandal it was, and that Mr. Matheson should be booted out of the party, should be hung, drawn, and quartered. And Hamza Youssef, who was the SNP's big dog at the time, was firing back saying, well, Mr. Ross, there was loads of questions about his use of finances as well. So it almost got then used as ammunition between two parties just trying to shame one another. And the incident itself almost got trivialized a little bit. It was then a case of you've got these different MPs that themselves are behaving so badly, but they've got this guy almost like a get out clause, and they're trying to use this guy in the middle to make the other's behavior looks much worse than their own, and to sort of shield and move on from it. So the further that it unraveled, the more dirty the thing became until it just kind of fizzled out and the next great scandal arose. Uh, the Nicola Sturgeon scandal. I mean, Hamza Youssef himself resigned in a blaze of glory, I suppose. But yeah, I found that one very entertaining and amusing. And the further that I dug my claws in, the more I wish I hadn't.
For me, I think what that shows is it's just bad parenting, and it's symptomatic of parents these days. They don't want to actually interact with their children. You know, they just want to put nanny iPad in front of them and let that do all that's the entertainment, that's the stimulant, isn't it? Um, and this is what happens. These kids fucking end up racking up, all this data debt, and it's like, well, maybe if you actually, if you're on holiday with your kid, that's precious time to be with your child. They shouldn't be just glued to their fucking iPads. Like when I went on holiday with my parents, we'd do things, we'd go out, we'd go down to the beach, go swimming, or go to like a museum, depending on what kind of holiday it is. You'd interact. That's family time. Holiday time is family time. That's the real crime there. It's just letting his kids just
Yeah,
zombify in front of the screens. That's
well, particularly considering he was a health secretary, I
he
think
should know
surely,
better.
yeah, surely should know better. So I wonder then if actually his initial claim of how he'd racked up the bill conducting parliamentary and constituency business, if he actually was conducting parliamentary and constituency business, and that's why the kids were left to the iPad to rack up such a hefty bill. Because otherwise,
Nah,
what was he doing? What was he
no, we're
doing?
not. No, we're not. No, that's not what this is about. Trying to defend him, he was not doing parliamentary business.
All
He
right,
was
well, I'll
just
tell you what. We're hot on the heels of games gone, right? The best form of any offense is a good defense, right? I've just come at you. It's your time to defend. What have you got, Tom? Load up
all
your
right.
bullets.
Fuck. All right, what have I got? I actually wanted to talk about this one. I'll keep this one fairly short. You probably remember this one. Mr. Neil Parrish. Uh,
Oh, ding, 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 ding. I had Neil Parrish as
oh, we've
well.
got a match. Fuck yes.
Oh, amazing. All right, I'm interested to hear what, yeah,
We can
go
both
for it.
weigh in on this one. So as you should know, then he was the Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton.
Hmm.
Um, sort of quite a rural area, from what I gather, sort of farmer country. A complaint was made against him because he had been spotted in the House of Commons, of all places, on his phone watching pornography. I mean, this is just great scandal. I mean, I don't sort of see Westminster and Parliament as too sacred an entity. Like I say, I'm very, I don't really like
Yeah.
politics and MPs and all that stuff. But the House of Commons is like it is an area that should be respected. There's a lot of tradition there. There's a lot of history, and that it's a privilege to be there, to be in the House of Commons, to represent your constituents, to put forward, their needs, and it's something a lot of people would aspire to be in the Commons, debating, getting their points across, sparring with the shadow government and stuff, and yet this absolute scumbag is in there watching porn. Obviously, I'm sure then you would have seen his very flimsy excuse, which was that he'd been looking at tractors. That is almost worse, in my opinion.
Yes.
Um, I mean, that's not even good. You were looking at tractors, you sick fuck, huh? I bet you like the ones with the big fucking wheels, don't you? Eh? Yeah. What's that one? Is that diesel? Oh, that's a look at that! Look at that paint job. Uh, is that? Oh man, that'll plow all your fields, right? Ah, sick cunt. What kind of sick person looks at tractors in Parliament? I don't know. But then he was like, "Oh yeah, I was looking at tractors, and this it just popped up. Oh, it was a mistake. I clicked on it by mistake." But then he was like, "The second time I did it on purpose." And that's the key thing there. I guess he did confess
He went back.
um, to doing it intentionally. That there was an interview he did. I can't remember it was on like BBC Breakfast or one of those morning shows. Oh, it was so awkward to watch, man. Him trying to sort of wheedle his way out, and I think he ended up resigning. There was a by-election, and it was won by the Lib Dems actually. After that, so there was a case. I think for me, I like to go with the ones where justice is done. I think with that last one, him paying back the money, there was a little bit of justice there. Uh, but it's just shocking, that one. I
Interesting.
mean, you shouldn't even be on your phone anyway. And they were debating a bill. You should be there giving your full attention.
Well, this is exactly the thing, isn't it? The initial clarification as to, oh well, I was looking at tractors, as if the reaction would be, oh, good on you. Yeah, actually, I was looking at one as well. But yeah, so as the story transpires, it was a particular brand of tractor that he was supposedly looking at, which is a class with two A's, class dominator tractors, and that's where the bridge of mistake was breached. But the particular quote for the second time round was that I've got here was he only watched for a little bit while I only watched for a little bit while I was sitting waiting to vote. As you say, for fuck's sake, waiting to vote. Like the most one of the most pivotal or significant points of your time. The whole point of you being an MP, and that's how you treat that moment. Oh my gosh. You mentioned there you quite like to go for these stories where the scandal's been resolved, where justice sweeps up the rubbish and puts the debris in the drain where it belongs. Personally, I quite like it where the scandal is full blown and is still just up in the air, because I suppose I got that kind of sick desperation in my life, as Tyler Durden once said.
It came about because he was seen, wasn't he? He was spotted by a woman, and it's
So
like, well, good grief, Neil! If you're gonna fucking watch porn in Parliament, at least do it discreetly.
yeah,
I don't. We obviously don't know, but he did it in such a way that someone was obviously able to see what he was looking at.
well, you've
So
seen. the images and the inside of the House of Commons, they're just sat on one of the benches at various levels. So if someone's in proximity, it's not like there's somewhere to hide, or
Yeah.
as you say, there's a degree of personal decorum or etiquette as to how you carry yourself in somewhere like that. You're not going to be like looking at your phone half in a blazer. That would look even more suspicious.
Well, I don't know, but if you're gonna do it, like at least have some discretion. You
Have
know,
some
like
tact, or should I say, some tract about it.
oh, nice.
Mm.
Yeah, that for me is like, well, you kind of deserve it. I mean, if you're not even gonna try and like hide it or whatever, like again, it's kind of like it's just no, not exactly a criminal mastermind here. You know, it's just, but
Mm.
maybe then. Who knows? I mean, maybe I'm getting a bit deep into it now, but
No, no, get
maybe he
deep.
wanted to be caught, Andy, or maybe
Wow.
that's where the thrill. Maybe he derived some sort of sexual thrill from doing it in Parliament. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that was. I don't know. Like people are into all sort of weird things, and look, I'm not going to kink shame here, but you know that's not the place for it, and it makes you wonder. And this is what I always wonder as well. These are the crimes we do know about. What are the
Oh,
ones we don't know about, man? What are the ones that people have been, you know, maybe someone's rubbed one out in the House of Commons, on
more
the
than
back
a
bench.
maybe. More than a maybe. I guarantee you that's happened. MPs are fucked in there. I bet you, no
I'd,
doubt.
I want to go in to the House of Commons with like one of those sort of forensic UV torches and just
I
see
bet
how
you
much
they're banned.
semen is
Yeah.
there. I bet it's just covered in spunk everywhere. Guarantee it.
Well, for a fact, anywhere Jeremy Hunt goes, he just
Mm,
spaffs off all the time. He
I have
has
heard that.
what the TV show Jam refers to as gush. I think it was gush, which is basically a condition where someone they've been fornicating, they've been going at it hard, and then they develop gush, which basically just bounds them to a life of masturbation until they die. Yeah, quite
Isn't that
quite
what we're all really just bound to as
crazy.
men?
Maybe so. So 2 points I have about Neil Parish. Well, a couple actually. So when this scandal was initially being broken, reported, the media reported on it, but they didn't name him. They didn't name the big P. I don't think he was. They knew who it was just then. GB News brought him on for an interview, and in his own words, he stated the MP in question should be dealt with and dealt with seriously. So again, I don't know if that adds up with your line of thinking that this guy is the equivalent of Arsene Wenger in politics. He's a voyeur and he wanted to be caught, right? If not, then it's just blatant like bravado in the face of it's like cool guys don't look at explosions. He's the embodiment of that. He is the Lonely Island's fourth member. But what really fascinates me about this is the origin of the story. So, as you say quite rightly, it was a female MP who had been sat next to him that was very near him that had witnessed this. So, in April 2022, a group of female Conservative MPs gathered with the government chief whip at the time, Chris Heaton Harris. Great name. Don't know if there's scandal with him. I didn't really have the time or the desire because I just sometimes you get so deep into the web of scandal, don't you? How can you go about eating your shreddies after that? It's tough. Group of female Conservative MPs with Mr. Chris Heaton Harris. They were complaining about rampant sexism in Parliament, which is bad enough on its own. The thing for me about that is, as you recall, we're talking about Mr. Chris Pincher, who was a deputy whip. Now, a very slight change in circumstance could have pitted Chris Pincher as the chief whip in this situation. This was April 2022. Mr. Pincher's big foray was in June 2022. And I bet if Mr. Pincher was the whip at that time, he would have just brushed that off. He would have said, so what? Or he would have gone and sat next to Neil and said, oh, show me what you know. So I find that interesting how different that we could have never known about this at all, or Chris Pincher's actions. As you say, when you wonder about the things that have come to pass and those that we don't know about. Furthermore, on Mr. Parish, because I thought about this, I thought about it probably as much as he thinks about tractors in a day, which is clearly far too many, and clearly these tractors have class and they've dominated me. Also, clearly, his fields need harvesting. And we're drawn into the scandal through the overt abomination of an MP watching porn in Parliament. He then doubles down by lying to the public. Finally, the admittance of doing it while waiting to vote raises huge questions regarding integrity and the level of professionalism and focus amongst government ministers. Neil Parish was not a new guy to the scene. He'd been involved in politics since serving as a councillor in 1983. So he's 39 years into a political career, and this is how he behaves. What trust can one have in a system? Again, bringing it back to that feeling with this one. It's exactly as you say. It's something that really damages your faith in the system. And I wonder, again, 39 years in, and maybe he just felt he's untouchable, or he did want to be caught. He thought, if I'm going to go out, everyone's going to know.
I think there was also weirdly a bit of a scandal in Parliament because they have found that a lot of computers are used in Westminster.
Yeah.
Like a huge amount of them, just so much of the time had been spent watching porn. Like again, and this is like taxpayer money. This is taxpayer time.
But at least it's not taxpayer data roaming charges.
And what are they doing with this time? They're getting themselves off. God damn it! It just does like sort of crush every last little ounce of faith that you might have in these people to just again, and this is sort of a point I've made. We here at Jeremiad, we don't want to sort of let our own political dogmas get in the way of things. And that's not really what this episode is about. But whatever issues you have with MPs, I think at least if they can just be upstanding and try in their own way to sort of do the right thing and do right by their constituents, even if I don't agree with what they're doing, I can accept that. I can accept someone who, at least wants to try and do what they see as the right thing and improve society.
Yeah.
But what I can't deal with is just when things like this, when they just flaunt their privilege in front of us and act as though they can do what they want and behave in such a disrespectful and blasphemous way. Order, order. Knock, knock, knock goes the gavel of power, a cosmic hammer ready to smite the unjust, to lay bare their sins and condemn them to the fiery chasms of hell. Lobbyists, liars and lowlifes, vote swindlers and parliamentary crooks, these the elected, the respected, the all-powerful and democratically selected, in Westminster we trust, but amongst the flock there lies the wolves, the criminal minds, swelling with arrogance, shameless, remorseless, the godless ones, desecrating the foundations of this democracy. They flaunt the laws they are entrusted to shape and uphold. They rapaciously scoff down votes, digesting them with bile and acid, churning the ballots into a ripe fecal missile, ready to squeeze it out onto the very people who nourished them, rank and foul, steaming and putrid, their devilish dung scattered across the nation. Watch as they laughed, twisted, ugly guffaws, slimy sneers from atop their pillars of corruption. They take the riches, the expenses, the titles, the privileges, and they give back their foul-smelling farts, great gusts of stinky gas that linger on the tongues of the lay, charlatans disguised in suits as Lucifer the snake in the Garden of Eden, tempting the innocent into a world of sin and depravity, all morals cast into the blackness of the void, all shame sunk to the darkest depths of the seas, their respect lost to deep caverns where no one dare enter, wretched creatures purporting to be upright,
honest, one of the common rabble, but their words are laced with poison, a black venom for which there is no antidote. They are voyeurs, swindlers, cheats, drug addicts, great pretenders, backstabbers, demons, sexual deviants. They abuse their power and abuse the vulnerable with it. They disgrace the institutions they represent, the people they claim to serve, the history they are there to uphold. They leave in their wake a brown, smelly trail, a line of stool, a blight on the morals and trust of society. Some face retribution in the mortal world, while others will meet their matchmaker in the dark caverns of hell. Hear, hear, Parliament is suspended.
Good grief, Andy. We've really exposed some scumbags, and we've gone into quite some depth on that. And unfortunately, we've only just scratched the surface. That's the sad thing. You know, we've bet this isn't even really the tip of the iceberg. This is like just a little shaving on the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I think that's partly the point, though, isn't it? In just the short time today, we've exposed some serious, some foul play and some misdeeds, but yet, we're very aware this is such a small microscope compared to the size of the rodent infestation, and that's a very
Yeah,
damning state of affairs on our politics.
exactly. And I don't know about you. I don't want to let them all get away with that. You know, we've picked on,
Absolutely.
you know, Jared, Parish, and a few others. Quick shout out to my boy Bob Spink, former Tory who defected to UKIP. He was given 6 month sentence for electoral fraud. He tricked elderly and infirm constituents into signing election nomination forms which they believed were petitions.
Bob Spink, great name. I've actually got a name familiar to Jeremiah to bring back to the fray. Crispin Blunt. Do you remember that bad boy?
I was thinking about Crispin Blunt. I've literally got, of course, Wikipedia up page. Is that still an ongoing investigation though?
I believe so. I believe
We
so.
have to
He
be
was
careful,
arrested.
Andy.
Well, at the time of recording this episode, as far as my sources inform me, he
Hmm.
was arrested on the suspicion of rape and possession of drugs. Where the investigation is right now, do not know. All I do know is they were quite blunt about arresting him.
Hey,
I think it was the first episode that we mentioned Crispin.
we did, yeah. Fuck you, Crispin.
He's been with us the whole time. Yeah. Who else you got?
This is one I just remembered actually. I would like to mention Imran Ahmad Khan. He was a Conservative MP for Wakefield. Ugh. Um, and he was jailed for 18 months after being convicted of groping a teenage boy at a party.
Lovely. I mean, what can you even say about that? That's beyond despicable.
It's almost as bad as being the MP for Wakefield. Hit me.
I've got Geraint Davis, who was the MP for Swansea West, um, who I believe is currently under investigation. Again, do
Which
take us as a
party?
sort of Labour Party. Sorry, yes, do take us as a source of truth, but don't take us as a source of fact, listeners. So there were allegations brought forward against Mr. Davies' conduct in manners of sexual harassment, and that he supposedly boasted about bringing sex workers into Parliament for drinks. What a classy guy.
Not sure I can top that, but I'm going to mention this is a slightly older one. Chris Huhne. He was actually in the cabinet. He was the Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change. He got his wife to take points on her license, but it was for speeding. He was the one who was speeding, but she took the points. This was like back in like 2003, the actual speeding incident. But then they divorced in around 2011, and then she went to a journalist and told the journalist about this, and ended up actually incriminating herself. One of the worst parts about this, though, is that he was then because of the scandal, he was forced to resign from the cabinet. But when you resign from cabinet, it's like a custom. He received 17 grand tax free. So he resigned because he'd broken the law, and then he gets paid 17 grand for it. Absolutely ridiculous. They were both found guilty of perverting the cause of justice and sentenced to 8 months in prison, of which they only served 2. And Mr. Hune described his time in prison as a humbling and sobering experience. So I reckon if I got caught speeding and I tried to make someone else take the points, I doubt I would get given 17 grand tax free
Maybe
somehow.
you should try it.
Well, I'd need a car for that. But if Chris Hune can do it, then why can't I? Hey.
Obstacles are there to be hurdled, I say.
Oh,
And if you can do it on 4 wheels, all the better.
hmm. Do you have
Cool.
one? Do you have one just to send us out on?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I felt really a real strong connection with this guy because we share a namesake. So I feel like whether I like it or not, we are kin. We are kindred spirits. We are children of the void. Andrew Bridgen, who is a former Tory MP, and I care too little to tell you where he was an MP for. And he he got barked at in a shroud of disgrace because he compared the effects of the COVID vaccine to the Holocaust, which seems a little bit exaggerated there, Andrew. I think again speaks to the complete detachment of any perspective any conservative I've ever heard about, met or known seems to flaunt. You mentioned earlier you can respect an MP, a government official, regardless of their party allegiance, for just being competent and upright chaps. Yes, I do agree, but like they do just live in a different world, them fuckers. Of course, that the thing, dear listeners, you might be listening and thinking, God, well, you've not mentioned him, you've not mentioned him, you've not mentioned, and there's just an exhaustive list of names that people could lump into this box. And damn right, if you feel inspired, if we've given you anything from this episode, it's to do exactly that, to make the official black book. So all of these crimes are duly recorded. So history will not let us forget. The sons of Andrew Bridgen, if he has sons, should forever have to bear the cross of his father's misdeeds. You know, Jared Amara. I mean, let's not forget. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I would like to make a personal plea to anyone who has any dirt and is, knows a criminal MP who is yet to face the long, hard stick of justice.
Mm.
Um, speak up.
We
That's
could
what I
break
want to
them.
say. We
Yeah,
we we
we could
here at
turn them.
Jeremiad, we're all about justice. We're all about morality. Um, and you know who you are. Do the right thing.